Morning. Colleagues, today we have Nolitha Chiliza, who is from the city. She's an architectural professional with a decade of experience in local government, currently focused on addressing problem buildings, preventing deterioration, and to enhance inner city regeneration efforts. That's the presentation we are having this morning. Nolitha, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. It's quite a pleasure to be joining you guys today, as it's one of the last Fridays of Heritage Month. So today I'll be doing a presentation on inner city regeneration, but I'll be touching on problem buildings that have heritage elements. So forgive me if I turn off my video. I'm having a bit of a delay with our internet connection at this moment, so I'll be turning off my video in order for me to be able to share. Okay. Okay, you can confirm, Skura, if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Good morning, all, and thank you for joining in today as I present on an important topic concerning our heritage buildings in Durban. Um, Specifically directing it to eThekwini, supporting problem building owners and restoring their buildings. As we know, the economic downturn that is affecting property owners within the inner city. So while the focus will be on historical buildings, the historical significance of these buildings is, obviously undeniable. But today, my focus will be on the city's efforts to assist heritage building owners in maintaining and preserving these structures in the face of urban challenges.
Nolita, sorry, I wonder if you can make your PowerPoint full page.
Okay, is it full page now?
No, the other way. Let me see. Maybe you were right
Okay, let me
there.
try. Let me
Just go,
try.
maybe slideshow. It's okay. It's okay. I was just wondering why I'm seeing the talking bottom. It's okay. You can continue.
Okay, all right. So, Durban's rich architectural heritage reflects our colonial past, urban growth, and cultural evolution. Our city is filled with buildings from different historical periods, forming a key part of our urban identity and character. A major highlight within the eThekwini architectural landscape is the blend of, our Victorian, Edwardian, various style, international style, union style. We have quite a lot of a large number of Art Deco style buildings as well, which can be appreciated in many of our iconic buildings. We also have iconic structures such as, our Durban City Hall and the Old Courthouse. These aren't just important for their beauty and their historical significance, but they also tell a story of the city's economic and social development that has been going on over time. So, keeping these buildings preserved, obviously, we know it has its challenges such as economic downturns, urban development pressures, and neglect in some areas have put these structures at risk. Yet conserving them is still very essential as they provide a tangible link to the city's past. They contribute to our identity and offer a sense of place for our residents. Beyond that, these heritage buildings play an important role in keeping the city's architecture diverse. They serve as a counterbalance to the globalized and often generic urban development that we see today. So they are more than just cultural artifacts. These heritage buildings also have a clear economic impact. They're significant drivers of our tourism within the city. They attract visitors who are eager to explore the city's history through its architecture. So heritage tourism is a thing and brings in a lot of revenue to local businesses and services, from your hotels to restaurants. We all even have people that run businesses as tour guides within the inner city, viewing these buildings. In addition to just boosting our tourism, preserved heritage buildings can also attract investment. We've seen investors that often seek unique, character-filled buildings for adaptive reuse. They turn them into hotels and galleries, at times even offices that blend the modern functionality with historical charm. So recognizing the importance and the potential, as the eThekwini municipality, we have committed through initiatives like the problem building bylaw and other incentives that are within the economic development department. In that, we have subsequent strategies that are aimed at rehabilitating these neglected buildings. These efforts highlight the city's strategy to preserve our built heritage, not just for historical and cultural reasons, but also to unlock the economic potential that are linked to these buildings. So I'll just use one of the buildings that is quite iconic to Durban, which is the Durban City Hall. It's one of our most recognizable landmarks, blending history and architectural splendor right in the heart of the city. This building was built in 1910 and designed by Stanley G. Hudson. It showcases the elegance of Edwardian neo-Baroque architecture. The building's grand domes and columns and intricate details reflect the ambition and growth of Durban during that period, as the city was establishing itself as a key player in South Africa's economic and cultural scene. Originally built to serve a variety of public functions, our city hall has housed everything from municipal offices to the Durban Art Gallery. The Natural Science Museum is also in this building, and also the Durban Central Library. So it's more than just a government building. It has become a hub for culture, history, as well as public services, all under one roof. Its striking facade speaks to the Edwardian style, a love for bold and formal design, making it a visual highlight of the city. And over the years, City Hall has been more than just a building. It has been the backdrop for important events in our history as eThekwini, from public celebrations to political protests. It's centrally located, so it's always been a gathering space for people to connect, engage, as well as to express themselves. But like many heritage buildings, of course, it's not immune to the passage of time. So it has faced challenges, related to maintenance and preservation as it ages. The building stands as a reminder of why it's crucial to protect and care for our heritage, ensuring that the landmarks like this continue to be part of Durban's landscape for future generations. Therefore, this building has an architectural team and project management team that is dedicated to the maintenance thereof, as the city recognizes the vital role that it plays. So despite the challenges related to maintenance, City Hall remains popular. It attracts locals and visitors with a blend of history and architecture that draws people in. It contributes to the city's tourism and economy, so it's more than just a civic space. It's a symbol of Durban's growth and resilience over the years. It embodies the city's rich history while still playing a vital role today. Durban City Hall is a piece of living history that tells a story of the city's past, present, and hopefully the future. Keeping it preserved ensures that the story continues to be told for years to come. I'm also drawing in to the old courthouse. This one was built back in 1866. It's one of Durban's oldest surviving public buildings. It's located just next door to the Durban City Hall. This one was designed by Peter Patterson, who was an engineer during the colonial era. And this building originally served as the first official courthouse. Its Victorian architecture, with its clean lines and understated elegance, reflects the era's architectural trends. And over the decades, the building played a vital, significant role in South Africa's history. During the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879, the courthouse was fortified with loopholes to prepare for potential attacks. And later, during both World Wars, it served as a recruitment center and canteen, further embedding itself in the fabric of Durban's history. By 1912, the old courthouse was no longer in use for legal proceedings, but it wasn't the end of its story. As in 1965, the building was repurposed and became the local history museum, offering visitors insights into Durban's rich cultural heritage through its exhibits. The courthouse was also declared a national monument in 1980, therefore cementing its status as an important piece of our history. And this building has transformed from a center of law and order to a cultural institution, making sure that its legacy continues to be a significant part of Durban's historical narrative today. It stands today not only as a preserved piece of architecture, but as a window into the city's past. So I'll just be highlighting some of the buildings that have been well maintained and just look into its contribution to our architectural heritage. Just highlighting the importance of maintaining this building. This is another Art Deco building that has been very well maintained over the years. So maintaining heritage buildings brings about a wide range of positive contributions. It benefits both the community and the city alike. And first and foremost, preserving these structures ensures that the cultural and historical identity are kept alive. They allow future generations to connect with the city's histories through the stories of the city's past. And these buildings often serve as landmarks that help define the unique character of a city, making it more visually distinctive and historically rich. Economically, well-maintained heritage buildings attract tourism, which boosts local businesses and creates job opportunities. Visitors are drawn to cultural significance and architectural beauty of these buildings. They contribute to the local economy, and moreover, areas that are well preserved tend to see a rise in property values. They make them attractive to investors. This can lead to increased investment in both residential and commercial projects in surrounding areas, further spurring the local development of these areas. From an environmental perspective, preserving heritage buildings also supports sustainable development. So instead of demolishing these older structures, maintaining them reduces the demand for new materials and also minimizes construction waste. By repurposing heritage buildings for modern uses, such as turning old factories into offices, for example, or homes into boutique hotels, we can meet contemporary needs without compromising the architectural heritage. This approach often proves more environmentally friendly and cost effective compared to building new structures from scratch. And socially, the upkeep of heritage buildings fosters a sense of pride and belonging within the community. Um, pardon me. These structures often become focal points for local engagement, with community members participating in their preservation and use. Public spaces around these buildings become gathering spots that enhance social cohesion and create vibrant, active neighborhoods. Such a case in point is what we see in Florida Road, where old buildings or houses are being repurposed into restaurants, which has created quite an active streetscape. So, in many cases, the restoration of heritage buildings can help revitalize entire neighborhoods and improve the quality of life for residents. And they also encourage civic involvement when people take pride in their area. So, in essence, us maintaining heritage buildings strengthens both the cultural fabric and economic vitality of any city while promoting sustainability and social cohesion. These buildings are not just relics of the past, they are living parts of a community's present and future, continuously contributing to its growth and development. Just some streetscapes where you see these heritage buildings. They look quite good. However, we do have challenges that face the inner city when it comes to these buildings. So they are not immune to the impacts of urban decay, particularly within the inner city, where we see numerous buildings that have fallen into disrepair. This is often due to neglect and economic hardship. Other times, it's due to just negligent owners or developers. We've seen quite a huge habit of developers or these property owners that let these buildings go through natural demolition, where they are exposed to the elements and they start breaking away bit by bit. They've also left these buildings unsecured, and we find that vagrants start stripping these buildings. We often feel that what we've noticed is that it's often due to them thinking that they can circumvent applications to AMAFA by letting these buildings go through natural demolition, which is not the case. So, uh, in most cases, they become termed as problem buildings. That is often how we term them. These are buildings that are often left unmaintained. They lead to crumbling facades, broken windows, and overall structural deterioration in some aspects. We've also seen them being stripped by vagrants in some cases, and this not only diminishes the aesthetic appeal of the city, but also creates a sense of urban decline that deeply affects both residents and visitors. The visual degradation of these areas lowers the quality of life and contributes to a loss of pride in the community. Urban decay can spread if left unchecked. They impact adjacent neighborhoods and lead to a broader erosion of Durban's urban vibrancy. So without targeted intervention, these decaying areas risk becoming long-term issues that become difficult to rehabilitate in the long run. We also have safety concerns that beyond the visible signs of neglect, deteriorating buildings pose significant safety risks. Structural instability makes these buildings hazardous for anyone nearby, but they also become magnets for criminal activity. Abandoned or neglected buildings often serve as hideouts for illegal activities, exacerbating crime and grime in the surrounding areas. This not only threatens the physical safety, but also diminishes the public trust and safety within these urban spaces. Residents, as well as our visitors, feel unsafe, and this discourages them from engaging socially, economically, or even recreationally in these areas um, as the safety concerns rise. So communities then become isolated from these decaying parts of the city, and the urban environment becomes increasingly alienating. This creates a negative feedback loop where fear and neglect begin to feed into each other, and they further drive urban decay and disconnection from the inner city. The economic impact of urban decay is also very far reaching, and the presence of these dilapidated buildings significantly reduces property values within the affected areas. They deter investors who are reluctant to develop in decaying parts of the city. This leads to a cycle of disinvestment where the lack of economic activity results in further neglect and degradation. As the area deteriorates, local businesses suffer and economic opportunities begin to dry up. This leaves residents, pardon me, this leaves, okay, okay. and economic opportunities obviously begin to dry up. This leaves residents with fewer job prospects and reduced income potential. The declining property values also make it difficult for local governments and property owners to raise the necessary funds for restoration efforts. This economic stagnation then reinforces the existing socio-economic disparities, as wealthier areas such as your Umhlanga continue to attract investments and flourish, while neglected parts of the city fall further behind. And in the long term, this divide can then begin to deepen the economic inequalities that we see within Durban, and this hinders efforts to create a more inclusive and prosperous urban environment. We see the case in point in your South Beach. Uh, just one of the examples that we have was the old Alexandra Hotel that became Smugglers Inn. I'm sure some of the older generation within Durban will remember the building. It was then called Smuggies at the time. So it was then the Alexandra Hotel. It was built in 1879. This was once Durban's premier destination as it offers luxury and beachfront convenience at the time. In the 1960s and 70s, it was then, began going rebranding into Smuggler's Inn or Smuggies and became, quite famous for its lovely entertainment as well as the rebellious spirit that was associated with the patrons at the time. It attracted both locals and tourists. However, as the urban decay sets in along Durban's beachfront, the once thriving venue began going through a process of declining. And as you see, it was abandoned. It became stripped. It was then stripped by vagrants and also contributed to crime in the area, where we'd find that things will be stolen from neighboring properties, and the criminals will venture into use this building as a hideout, where even if they were being pursued, the pursuers will be reluctant to enter structures such as this. Okay, another building will be the Old Ham House. The building is at 44 Lances Road. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that it has been in the papers quite often due to the raids that have been conducted by the 15 worth SAPs. But if you go into this history of this building, it has a rich and varied history. It was completed in 1936. The building represented a significant heritage architecture in Durban. It showcases the international style and art moderne. It later became a disused warehouse and then was purchased by the University of Natal at the time, back in 1958, and renovated into the Marion building to accommodate non-European students during the apartheid era, as they were prohibited from staying on the main university campus. And decades later, the building housed the KZN ambulance service, but over time it fell into disrepair and became derelict. It was then donated to the city, but unfortunately, it was already illegally occupied. It was hijacked by numerous families that live within the structure, as it's located within the Warwick Triangle area, which there's a lot of informal economic activity that happens in that area. It's also a connector to a lot of townships that travel within the inner city. It's next to one of the biggest ranks within Warwick Triangle, which is the Claremont rank. So if left unattended, obviously, it then garnered a lot of attention to people who were wanting to make a home for themselves within this building. So this building has been earmarked for redevelopment as part of the low-cost housing project, but obviously there's delays and its deteriorating condition have hindered the progress. The area around the building has faced issues of urban decay, which is exacerbated by the abandonment of this building. So, despite its current state, the building still holds significant historical significance, and there have been efforts to preserve it for future use. However, we are struggling with the eviction process, as the PI Act then requires the city to provide alternative accommodation for the occupants of this building. We are having issues with acquiring land as well as funding, because there is no mandate to fund alternative, people that hijack buildings. And we found that in most cases, it's people that actually want to jump the housing queue. And so there is a tendency to hijack properties with that outlook. So that these are just some other heritage buildings that have been left abandoned and have neglected. As you can see, they're quite beautiful buildings. Um, this is also the tennis building. This has also been earmarked for housing. Unfortunately, it keeps also getting hijacked by people who are vagrants and live within the structure. So this is one of the outlooks of how these buildings facades end up looking when left neglected. Okay. This is also one of the most popular buildings that we get complaints about. It's also fully hijacked as well. So you just see the impact of neglecting building. It also just it becomes a breeding ground for criminal activity and leaves the buildings vulnerable to hijacking. So the impact of economic downturns does, impact the maintenance of these buildings. As they intensify the difficulties surrounding heritage preservation, particularly when it comes to funding, and restoration projects for this building, in this time, tough economic times, when governments and private investors tend to focus their resources on more immediate concerns. And this often puts heritage revitalization, on the back burner. And as a result, many heritage buildings fall into neglect, and without the necessary attention, they continue to deteriorate and sometimes beyond repair. This leads to the loss of important historical landmarks and the shift towards prioritizing the economic recovery over preservation becomes a significant obstacle. It undermines efforts to build a more resilient and sustainable urban future. Okay, so uh, the city has then formulated an inner city regeneration program. So this program has 14 work streams. So it currently is run in the office of the city manager, and his office coordinates the inner city technical committee. And this is where the 14 work streams are organized into groups, and then they report to the committee bi-weekly. They comprise of work stream owners, and the COO meets weekly with the team to coordinate implementation of the project plan. So problem buildings is one of the work streams within the inner city regeneration program. It's one of the most vital work streams because it does have cross-cutting features into all of the work streams. As any activities that happen within this building, whether it's overcrowding, whether they are hijacked, if there are no payment of rates, it does spill over into the public realm. It does impact on service delivery. It has an impact of infrastructure. For instance, if these buildings are overcrowded, it does have an impact on tourism. So it becomes a cycle. Um, and therefore these are the work streams and how problem building fits into each and every work stream. As I've mentioned, that it does have cross-cutting issues. So more on the problem building work stream or on problem buildings division. We know that we've communicated that as of 2023, the municipality within the work stream had identified, I think, a total at the time of 120 buildings within this work stream that were declared a problem building. So I've highlighted the definition of what a problem building is. Oftentimes, people would report and say that there is a problem building because the building looks derelict in appearance. In most cases, you find that that's a national building regulations issue. But when you have a mixture of issues um, that apply within that building, it might not look derelict, but it might have other elements that are recognized as an issue. For instance, maybe if it's illegally occupied or if it's overcrowded or we find that it's hijacked. So it might not look derelict, but because it comprises of all of these elements that contribute to, that can lead to decay of the area, we then move through the process of declaration of a problem building. So what we found that in some of the heritage buildings that lead to dilapidation are mostly your dysfunctional body corporates. We have issues with absent landlords, as well as there's a lack of appropriate permits when it comes to alterations of these buildings. Some of them are hijacked. So in response to that, the municipality established a problem building unit back in 2019, and the unit comprises of myself as the division coordinator, as well as building inspectors and administrative support. Um, Additionally, our unit has officials that are seconded from various other units. As I've mentioned, the cross-cutting issues related to problem buildings means that we need a diverse team and inputs from our other internal departments for various disciplines that include your land use management, fire department, we even have Metro Police, our Department of Water, which is revenue protection, as well as electricity, revenue protection, because some of these buildings have illegal connections to our water and electricity services. In that, we have a problem building steering committee. This committee sits monthly. It's responsible for coordinating responses across the municipality, where we present the problem buildings that have been served with notices of intent, and the committee gives us a decision or support for us to move forward with the declaration process. We've also have a large sum, of buildings now within the inner city, and we have a repair and recover program, which we've identified 37 properties that have now been earmarked as a priority for intervention for this financial year. And as of September 2023, as the municipality, we had managed to restore ownership of 23 hijacked buildings back to the owners, and a further 40 buildings have now been identified for that intervention. So the primary legal framework that we use is the problem building bylaw. Obviously, that is also supported by the national building regulations. The program has also instituted, as I've mentioned, a repair and recover program. We have, it's a very small budget of 8 million. Therefore, we do the absolute necessary when it comes to protection of the public to support our remedial work on these bad buildings. And this operates as a first line intervention to a slow rate of degradation. And respondents are notified of the bigger challenge with problem buildings, particularly ones that are occupied. So, because not only does the eviction process require costly and oftentimes a lengthy legal processes, but more critically, it requires appropriate decanting facilities as well. And such facilities become a responsibility of the municipality to provide. So I'll just be touching on the declaration process. So at times we get reports from other line departments that report to us. And from then we go and we inspect. When we see that it is of interest to the Problem Building Division, we then go to the PBSC, which is our Problem Building Steering Committee, where we present for consideration and acceptance. So once that is done, we then go out and we conduct a profiling inspection on the building, which leads to us serving notices of intent, and we give the property owners 14 days to respond to us with a maintenance plan that includes timelines of what they've planned to do in order to restore their building. Failing that, we move forward of serving the declaration notices. And we then do a full-on profiling. So if that building has been illegally occupied or hijacked, we then also activate human settlement so that they do their social profiling as well, in order for them to note the indigent occupants of those buildings and put them within the housing database. We also hand over for a high cost application if all fails and they are not willing to commit to turning these buildings around, where we lodge cost applications. And we can also do what we call a rate code change, where we move, for instance, if the rates are 1,000, it becomes times 22. So it means that the rate of that particular building can go up to 22,000. Our problem building statistics. Okay, so these numbers obviously they are not static, because as the work goes on the ground, we update our stats. At some point, we had over 102 buildings. We've subsequently had successes. We've also managed to assist problem building owners, those that have been hijacked, to gain control of their properties. We've had demolitions that have undergone. But it's not only, if you see the stats, it's not only the private ownership that's an issue, but even the municipality itself is also a culprit when it comes to owning problem buildings together with our national and provincial government. So because I can't necessarily present on privately owned buildings because of the Copy Act, I've then just selected a couple of buildings that are owned by government institutes. This is the SASA building. It's also a very beautiful building that has been dilapidated over time. This is also one of the buildings that I've mentioned. Thereby Victoria Embankment, also dilapidated. It's dysfunctional. They are unauthorized occupiers. There's a dangerous situation in this building. We have had discussions with the provincial government who owns this building, and they are in the process of disposing the structure. This is the Old Children's Hospital. It's also dilapidated. Public Works have expressed that they don't have funds to do repairs, but now it has, been part of the program that I'll explain later, where we've gone into a tripartite agreement with both eThekwini provincial government and national government, and they've made commitments in terms of restoring their buildings. This is also another government-owned building that the problem buildings have instituted a repair and recover of this building. So you can see that it's starting to look presentable. So now we'll be moving into the second phase, which will be working on this building internally and looking at the structural defects that are present. This is another building that is owned by provincial human settlements as well. We are in the process of consultation with them. And they've also committed to turn this building around within the next financial year. So this is another, and this is the Palm Beach Hotel, which is also a government building. So as problem building, we have a number of strategies that we have committed in. Oh, I'm sorry, are you able to see? I'm not sure what happened there. Colleague?
Yes, we can see, Nolitha.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, you can. It's just gone out of the bigger presentation thing. You can just go to at the bottom to a slideshow.
Okay. Sorry. Let me just stop sharing and reshare.
Yeah, I can just reshare.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
So the slideshow at the bottom and on top. You can try that. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Uh, see where I was. Okay, so part of the problem building strategies is that we are prioritizing the inner city, as we found that there's a lot of areas that are undergoing urban decay and are requiring support, focusing on zones 1 and 3 within the inner city, which is the City Ports precinct as well as the Mahatma Gandhi precinct, which are the areas where the city has contributed a lot of investment. Another priority zone that has come about recently is also Zone 5. We are looking at the zones that the city has invested a lot in, but obviously we do deal with cases from other outlying areas as they come through. So our long-term strategies include initiating engagement, which we have started regarding the amendment of the PI Act, because it's one of the legislations that really slows down our processes because of the whole element of getting alternative accommodation by the municipality. We have amended the problem building bylaw that has now allowed eThekwini to do the repair and recovery processes that was not included in the bylaw before. We've also undergoing the strict application of our credit control and debt collection bylaw. This now allows for sale and execution if the debt that is owed in that property uh, is in line with the property value. So that some buildings have now been identified for the process of sale and execution. We also have the building wrap incentive, which is what I will speak on today, where the MOU has now been prepared with our legal services in terms of using the building wrap incentive to assist problem building owners to acquire the budget or funding for them to be able to initiate the works that need to be done in their properties. We've also started negotiating with the judge president to give priority to problem building cases because of the issues that we've seen. You know, case in point, the Johannesburg fire um, that took the life of over 70 people. So these buildings become a priority now, and we have found that before it took a very long time for the city to even get a date to present on these cases. Okay. We've also started to facilitate accountability within the DDM structures to get interventions for them, for government-owned buildings, and to push for government departments to take responsibility for doing the work that is required in their buildings. So the problem building strategy approach is also a three-pronged approach where we incentivize, we also sanction, and we also do public engagement in relation to our awareness program. So this is what is usually termed as the carrot and the stick approach, where we incentivize property owners that engage with us and are willing to commit to turning their buildings around. We have the economic development incentive. I think this one was presented around 31 January by our economic department in terms of what incentives we have for problem building owners that want to develop their properties. We also have the UDZ incentive that allows for instance, whatever funding you use in turning your building around, you can then claim that through SARS over a 10-year period if it's within the urban development zones. Also have the building wraps strategy that I have just explained. We have development application fees. We reduce those fees by 50% if it is a problem building. So your LAM submission fees as well as DAA submission fees can be reduced. We also do fast tracking of those applications. So just recently with our revenue department, there is a debt write-off of a debt of up to R1 million for problem buildings that are deceased estates. So this is as long as there is a natural person that will be taking control of that building, so that if ever we need to serve notices or we need to institute any legal proceedings, we have a natural person that has taken over that estate. With our sanction, we have, we serve notices, we do court orders, we also prosecute and serve summonses. There's an element of rate code change that I've explained. We also undertake the remedial works as the city. This is an issue for obviously problem building owners, because when we have to undertake the remedial works, it means that we do it through the tender process. And more often than not, those prices are often quite high as opposed to if the property owner does the works themselves. And because of MFMA, we have to recover those funds. So whatever monies that we use in the remedial works of the property, that money is then added into the debt that is owned by that property owner. So it's always advisable that when we do serve the notices, the owners undertake those works themselves. As part of our awareness program, we do, in stakeholder engagement. We also invite business as well as civil society for our awareness programs. So with the building reps incentive that we also do as the city. Okay. This was part of the council decision that was made back in December of 2023 and was adopted by council to allow for RAPs to be done on problem building within the inner city. So this council decision does not include any secondary CBDs, or other outlying areas. It's still a trial phase, which is targeted for the inner city at this point. So, what is a building wrap? Building wraps are, advertising signs that are fixed flat against any outside wall of a building. They are made of vinyl mesh or a similar material. This is because we want to allow for ventilation, and also we want to allow for air movement so that these structures do not fall. These wraps do not fall off during windy seasons. So this should be installed in such a way that it has to cover more than 70% of the total wall area of the building. and that it will therefore create a perception that the building is wrapped in one advertisement. So this is permitted only in buildings that have been declared as bad buildings in all areas of control. So if whether it's max, we have areas of control for the advertising bylaw where there's maximum control where no advertising is allowed, minimum control where certain types of low impact advertising is allowed, and we have partial control. So if the building is declared a problem building, you can use the wraps on all of these areas of control, whether it's maximum, minimum, or partial control. That would not be applicable for that building. So also the installation guidelines are that the height of the advertising sign must not exceed, the extremities of the outside walls of that building, and it must also not exceed above the top of the building. So it must be within, the building's outline, and also the advertisement is not allowed within the first 3 meters of the ground level of that building. And also the position and spacing requirements for the building wrap should not be on the top of or above the walls of the building, and must not also project more than 1 meter from the walls of the building, or any or they must also not be painted or pasted directly on the wall. So in terms of regulation and compliance, we look at the problem building bylaw. We also look at the advertising bylaw, because now you are adding another element onto the structure. It requires that the national building regulation processes must be looked at, which means that you also need to submit an application plan. So the application of this advertising wrap is also, the price is also reduced by 50% when you do the application for this advertising. So bearing in mind that some of these buildings are occupied, the advertising signs must not obstruct the windows or the doors or even, passages or staircases of that building. It must not also egress, on the fire escape, or, on the exit lines of the building. Must not prevent the movement of people, on the building, whether it's the roof as well. So it should allow free flow in those elements. But if the building is not occupied, these considerations would not be applicable, because we do find that other, problem buildings are not occupied. So the duration of the wrap is 1 year. The wrap should only be up for 1 year. But if you are complying with the MOU and the requirements, it is open for extension until such time that the owner was able to source the required funds for paying off the council debt, and also enough funds to institute the refurbishment requirements on that building. Okay, so like I said, the application fee would be 50% reduced, but also it's important to also note that the income that will be generated from that building wrap, 60% of that income needs to pay off existing council debt, and 40% of that income would go towards refurbishment of that property. So the requirement is you provide us your monthly bank statement for us to be able to quantify how much income has been generated from the building wrap, and then you pay the 60%. You also show us, that the 40% is not being utilized. And if you plan to do any works, you submit to us a report together with any quotations that you might have made in relation to the works that you want to do, so that we can justify, where the money has gone from your that building account. So with that, a memorandum of agreement has to be entered into with the city and the property owner, not the advertising company, but the property owner that will be responsible for what happens in that property. So this now provides a lifeline for rehabilitation of those buildings because the income funds repairs as well as maintenance. It goes towards paying off debt. If there are safety concerns associated with that building, you get people that enter that building, you can then put security control, safety concerns in relation to the building itself. You can then, implement maintenance or repairs to fix that dangerous situation. It also helps facilitate redevelopment. It also has benefits to the advertising industry, such that it provides high visibility of the product that is being advertised. The spaces for advertising are quite unique because you have different buildings of different heights, orientations, etc. It also provides for market differentiation, and it has an increased revenue generation element. So this is one of the buildings that was a problem building. As you can see, this was one of the iconic buildings of the time, Rwanda Vista, 544 Mahatma Gandhi. So if you see, the structure, you see that plaster begins to break off. This then, exposes the building. It's also very close to the sea, which also has, corrosion of the structure. You see that balustrades have been removed. So overall, it is a safety concern in the building, and this is how it looks now with the building grab. It looks quite presentable. It highlights good quality streetscape as well. It looks good on the facade, but it's important to note that it does not fix the problem. The problem is still there. As you zoom into the pictures, you can see that it's not fixed. It doesn't assist the building in any way, but it does help with the income regeneration. Um, the owner has made two installments so far because this is quite new in the payment of the council debts. That is over 1 million on this property, so it's making quite good progress. He's now sent us through quotations for security upgrades to protect the building from illegal occupation as well. So the impact of problem buildings are that it has, incentivized owners to do refurbishment of their properties, and we have had 12 of those in the last financial year. Over the years, we've also had a couple of demolitions as well. We've rectified dangerous situations where a structural element was posing significant danger either to the occupants or to the people that are utilizing the vicinity. We've also assisted hijacked property owners to get control of their buildings, also facilitated redevelopment of those properties. We've done a couple of repair and recover action items in the last financial year. Uh, so we've made quite good progress, and this is just one of those. In this property, it was, a lot of drug activities, criminal activities related that included drug storing and prostitution. Through the problem building department, it has now been redeveloped into a student accommodation. So this is another building within the back of Beach Mahatma Gandhi Road. It was also beginning to go through the process of decay. We was owing quite a large number, quite a high municipal debt. So we've assisted the property owner. It's now been repurposed into a student accommodation as well, which is, in quite high demand within the inner city. This is one of the buildings, the Siemens Institute, as I presented, was owned by Public Works Provincial. This is how it looked before, and through the repair and recover process, this is how we've fixed up the building and done waterproofing as well to prevent from further water ingress into the building. This is also another heritage building. Within the application for redevelopment, they were instructed not to keep the facade. That then resulted to it being unstable. So it has now been subsequently pronged up. And then we've done, murals to make the area, look good. And we've um, also done some work on the rusting steel elements that are holding up the building. This is another building that is illegally occupied and was posing a significant danger to the occupants. We've fixed the dangerous situation and also begun refurbishing the building externally. This was also another building that is now repurposed into student accommodation. So I can open the floor to any questions. I'm done with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Nolitha, for that presentation. Um, it's good. It's good to interact with people who are part of policy and give us the background of how the buildings are important and all of that. Nolita, one question is, I think at Siemens Building, I do recall that there were illegal occupants there. How did you deal with that particular case at the point?
Uh, the The illegal occupants are still there, but we have profiled them and identified occupants that are indigent and that have been now included into the database for housing. So that is where we currently are. We do have issues with funding for that mandate, but it's now with human settlement. However, there were they were collaborating with us, when we were doing work internally to secure the building. So they didn't give us any issues when we were doing the works on the building because they've also realized that it's not quite, a safe structure to be occupying. So we didn't have issues during that process.
Yeah. Then another question close to that is how how long does is the process of um, trying to deal with the building hijack situation versus the operation that we saw by the SAPS in raiding some of the buildings because of crime. So what is the distinction between just going in there and be able to evacuate people, or have a process of identifying occupants and providing alternative accommodation?
Okay. So it is quite a lengthy process. So it can take up to 5, 10 years to actually get people out. And because of the PI Act, the responsibility lies solely on the municipality to provide that alternative accommodation. So if we don't have the funding, we are in a stalemate. And even if the court order may come up that says the people need to be evicted and we must provide alternative accommodation, we still get stuck because of funding issues, and land scarcity as well is another issue. So we don't really have a definite timeline in terms of, you know, how that can be done. But we do have, certain successes where we find that these properties are not hijacked by the indigent. They hijacked by people that are working, that are earning above the minimum, the requirement for housing. So in those cases, it becomes quite easier because we just provide a report that we've sourced the rentals around the area, and this is how the pricing of the rentals are, and therefore this person can afford to find an accommodation for themselves. So with regards to the SAPS operation, the buildings were provided by problem buildings because those are buildings that we had already profiled. Those are buildings that we had, already had our human settlements do social profiling. So we have identified the indigents. We have identified, the criminal sources. We have also identified the illegal immigrant occupation. And so with that data, SAPS, in collaboration with eThekwini, was able to um, do the operation in those buildings, where they were able to find the illegal activities and do arrests. However, in relation to the occupants that are indigent, those people, we could not remove from those buildings because they are protected by the legislative framework.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll open the floor to anyone who'd like to comment or ask questions. I've got Mike, Lungelo, and Johan. Mike, please.
Thanks, Kira. Thanks very much for the presentation. Just two questions. The one is relates to a city-owned problem building. I think I walk past at least once or twice a day, the La Belle restaurant on the corner of St. Thomas's Road and Essenwood Road. I understand that it's going out to tender today. So my first question is, has that building been assessed in terms of the repairs that have to be done? I mean, for any person thinking of developing it, just to assist them in terms of knowing what the value is of those repairs. My second question relates, and I've asked this several times, is the IPPPU report of 2017, being the Inner City Regeneration Plan and LFP. Does that form part of your terms of reference for your work group? Thanks very much.
Thank you for that question. Regarding the properties that are being released for tender, that is handled by our real estate department. So they would have done the preliminary investigations that have obviously would then lead to them identifying which buildings require disposal and which buildings can be retained and repurposed. So the best people to acquire those reports will be real estate. If you could leave your details if you are interested, I can then link you to the officials from real estate so that you can inquire regarding those reports. And in terms of the IPPU, sorry,
my interest is more out of certainly not for me. Thanks. It's
yeah. So they would have. So they would have conducted those preliminary investigations regarding, the structural stability, etc. Because um, those are the reports that are necessary for them to determine which buildings they would be able to dispose and which buildings can be repurposed. Because as a city as well, we also require, office space. So I don't necessarily think it will make good sense to give away buildings that can be utilized for office space. But obviously, buildings that are within the beachfront vicinity serve a different purpose. So those ones, even if they are in good condition, would form part of the tendering process because they require economic, vitality within that space. So they have different purposes for disposing of buildings. However, the preliminary reports would have been done. So if those are required by any developers, the information on those tender adverts will be there for in terms of who to contact regarding that. And in terms of the IPPU reports and the LOP, yes, it does serve part of that. That is Dr. Soob's department, and she worked very closely with the formation of the Inner City Regeneration workstreams program, and that would have been taken into consideration when formalizing that program.
Delighted to see her name on that list. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Nolitha. I'll have Lungelo, Johan, and Ken. Lungelo, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues. I just want to thank, firstly, SAIA KZN for bringing Nolitha to this conversation. I think it's very insightful, Nolitha, what you're sharing. Your presentation is very comprehensive. It's quite exciting to know that the city is actually doing something about these dilapidated buildings, because for us, built environment professionals, driving around the city and seeing all these dilapidated buildings, it really frustrates us. It actually compromises our quality of life, not only us as professionals, but the community at large. So it's very good to know that the city is doing something about it, and also it's quite very impressive to see the amount of work that have been done over these few years. To note that this unit was established in 2019, and you guys have managed to recover 23 hijacked buildings. That's very mind blowing. And also, I would like to plead maybe in terms of your recover and repair program. I think you need to increase the budgets that you have to make sure that this type of work is able to be implemented. And also, in terms of now zoning, I think zoning puts a lot of pressure to developers. So I think they must be brought into a conversation or engage to relax some of these zonings bylaws for these buildings to increase appetite to investors. But other than that, thank you so much. And also, in terms of alternative accommodation given to illegal occupants, I think you must also benchmark what the city of Cape Town is doing in terms of providing safe spaces whenever they have to evict illegal occupants. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Lungielo. Indeed, we are conducting a benchmarking process with the City of Cape Town. That is still ongoing. However, it's also important to note that the elements that are, prevail in Cape Town are quite different to what Durban also faces, but also similar in some aspects. Engagement with land use is ongoing in terms of identifying, because I mean, in terms of land use and our legislative framework, we often are very reactive. So we do, on an ongoing basis, do these workshoppings where we identify how can we proactive, how can we identify the direction that the city is going in terms of the uses and the economic requirements that are prevailing in those areas, so that we can be more proactive and direct these developments instead of us being responsive and more reactive, where we're trying to now fiddle around and try to um, and try to correct what has already been ongoing on the ground. So thank you for that. The engagements are indeed ongoing, and hopefully in due time you'll be able to come into this platform and present what the city has done in that aspect. Thank you, Lungelo.
Thank you for the input, Lungelo. Thanks for the response, Nolitha. My friend from the Free State, Johan, I'm not sure your hand goes up and then comes down. Whether you need to do more pull-ups in the gym. You still want to go for it?
I can quickly. Thanks, Kura. Thank you so much, my colleague in Bloemfontein and in Durban. So, Nolitha, thank you very much. Great presentation and great work done by eThekwini. I visited recently Cape Town, and I did speak with the CEO there of the CID for the city, and Tasso, and he actually highlighted quite important point. They've got more than 3 billion of investment waiting to happen as we speak, and that is because of the process that they started in 2000 already. That's now a 24-year process to have a CID, a City Improvement District. So they apply special rates for property owners. The current income is about 100 million a year, which they spend 50 million on security. So I just want to know, eThekwini, do they have a similar process in place? Because what I can see, it's really government trying to fix the problem, but the property owners must actually stand up and stand together and try to fix this. Is there such a process in place? And then, Nolitha, will the presentation be made available, and can we invite you for another presentation to help other cities as well to try to solve the CBD problem? Thank you so much. Thanks. Back to you, Skura.
Thank you for that. Yes, the city does have that in place in the form of UIPs, where we are assisting them to establish something similar. Also in the cards is the inner city management company that is going to be developed, which is going to be running the inner city precincts and ensuring that because they have benchmarked what has been happening in Cape Town, so to ensure that those elements are also activated in eThekwini through that inner city management company. So the groundwork has already been done. So I think it's just the formalization now that needs to happen, and Dr. Soups is heading that development. So yeah, that is ongoing. Just in a couple of months, hopefully we'll be hearing something in terms of progress in that regard. And yes, the issues with problem buildings and inner city degeneration does happen in all cities, and we are, it will be a pleasure to present what we have done and what has worked for Durban to other cities as well. We've already started engaging municipalities in KZN or local authorities within KZN, and would love to also extend those engagements to our municipalities in other provinces as well. So thank you. Yeah, and yes, the presentation will be made available. I'll send it through to Skura to disperse. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolitha. Thank you, Johan. Johan is the president of the Free State Institute of Architects, which now incorporates the Northern Cape as well. Mr. Ken Lever.
Right, Skura, I've got sound, but no visual. Thank you very much. But more importantly, thanks, Nolitha, for all your hard work and your clear presentation, and certainly been very stimulating. However, to get the private sector involved fully requires serious incentives. What lessons have you learned from other cities in the country, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, Bloemfontein, Gabera, and so on, about incentives that they're offering? Because not only should we be sharing information between cities, but we're also in competition for investment with other cities. What investments are, and I picked up on one thing that you said, Nolitha, in that you're acquiring building owners who are now maybe looking at renovating, repairing, and repurposing their buildings. You're acquiring them to pay off outstanding service debts. Now, the municipality really has to understand that it's got to provide real, proper incentives if people are going to invest huge sums of money in buildings, not just to build them and renovate them, but also to maintain them and keep them going. That's the first question. The other question is, have you identified any particular areas? Seems to me that you're spreading your concerns far too wide. Are you not concentrating on certain areas and providing serious incentives for those areas? That's enough, Nolitha. Thank you, if you can answer those.
Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Thank you for that. Our economic development department, I think, Skura, they had presented those incentives around January this year. So we do have quite serious incentives. They obviously have their requirements in terms of what kind of developments those incentives apply to, as well as the threshold of investment that will be made in redeveloping the property. So it's quite an extensive. It was quite an extensive presentation that they made, but I think also involved is that those buildings would not be paying, I think, rates for a certain period. I think it's about 5 years. So obviously, it's quite an intense presentation that they made. with a lot of requirements. It was quite comprehensive as well. And I think that they would be the best people to maybe provide. I can provide you the presentation because I do have it. But I think they would be the best people to provide or present it, because we as problem buildings, we are just a conduit that we realize, okay, this is what this property developer intends on doing, and then we link them to the appropriate persons within that department. So I think I would not do it justice if I just give you a rundown of what is of what they provide. I think the best way is for me maybe to provide, when I do send out my presentation to Skura, to also include their policy, because they also have a policy that regulates that. They also did a presentation. I can provide that as well to Skura. And hopefully we can do another presentation in the future, Skura. I'll leave that up to you to decide, where they can then, present and also showcase where those incentives have been a success within the city. Um, okay, and yes, in terms of our focus, our main focus area would be the Mahatma Gandhi or Point Precinct, where there's been a substantial investment by the city. We've also identified zones 1 and 3. So most of our focus are within those zones. But if there are problem buildings or issues within other outlying areas, we cannot ignore them, because more often than not, there are elements of safety, increase in crime that are associated in those areas. So we cannot neglect those areas. We do take them on, but our main focus and where we spend our money or funding as problem buildings is in Mahatma Gandhi precinct, together with urban development zone 1 and 3 within the inner city. So our priority is the inner city at this stage.
Thanks, Nolitha. Tell me, is there any national coordination process going on with regeneration, particularly of city centres? And you're obviously a little bit compartmentalised in eThekwini, clearly. If there's no coordination with the money bags, but I appreciate what you're doing, and obviously the municipality is there to facilitate. At the end of the day, the municipality can do a certain amount, but really it's a drop in the ocean compared to what the private sector can and should be doing. But is there any national coordination between the cities and the big towns in this country with regard to regeneration?
Yes, it is being done through the presidential work stream. So there is a coordination within a DDM, which there's a presidential work stream which the deputy president sits in, to ensure that the coordination does happen. So obviously that is usually attended by your executive management, and then information is then dispersed to us regarding the direction or directives that were taken in those engagements. So yes, there is. However, at this point, the work streams that I sit in regarding that coordination would be the provincial work streams that are run by COCTA in that regard. So that is where we are. I also do have a concern as well, as such, that as you've raised, in that we don't get the business or the private sector being really impactful in eThekwini, and we are hoping that as they see the progress that is made by the city, they can then gain confidence to also take their place in providing the much needed investment within eThekwini.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Nolitha.
It's always the bottom up.
Wayville, did you want to say something?
Thanks,
Sorry, I
Kura.
was just saying you've got to.
Sorry, Wayville. Sorry, Ken, do you want to have a follow-up question? Ken? Okay, Wayville, you can go ahead, Wayville.
Hi, Kura. Thanks very much for that.
Sure.
Thanks, Nolitha, for the presentation. My question is with reference to a lot of the buildings that a few of the buildings that you showed have been converted into student accommodation facilities. Obviously, these were never planned initially as that. What is the impact on issues of transportation, parking, and the like that are associated? And are there any plans to actually incentivize a lot more of the return of the office buildings as opposed to constant student accommodation? Because it then sort of lends itself to the plan or the probability of the city center becoming a student zone primarily over office buildings.
Thank you for that, Ravel. Yes, we do see that quite often, but however, it's within particular zones. It's not the entire city that allows for student accommodation. So that is limited to your Albert Park area as well as the Mahatma Gandhi Road. So it's not prevalent in all other areas. The city would rather have, used for commercial purposes such as your business uses as well. So there are incentives, like I said, through our economic development department that incentivizes development that will have a lot of economic activity, but they would have certain thresholds for those incentives. So they are there. And regarding to the transportation, we do have as part of the, let me just go back here, inner city regeneration work streams. There is a work stream that deals with, just go back, that deals with transportation within the inner city and city pedestrianization. So because of the ongoing developments that are happening in the inner city, the city has realized that it requires all of these work streams to be active in order for us to be able to respond to the demands that are required within the inner city, so that we are able to meet those. So that is also inclusive of your infrastructure upgrades, etc.
You covered, Weber?
Thanks, Gura. That's perfect. Thanks, Nolitha.
Sure,
Thank you
sure.
very much.
Frank, I saw you peeping there. I don't know you wanted to talk. Putting
Yeah,
you on
please.
the spot.
Yeah, please, Guru. Thank you. I can't find my hand thing, so I had to try and show myself in another way.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Nolitha, for that talk, and you started off so well with all your history and concern for the historical fabric of the city, and that made my heart very, very warm. But I think you kind of lost your way further in, where I really feel that there's a kind of a neglect in the analysis of those properties for the significance of the building, the historical importance of those buildings. And I feel that the city can really partnership with the institute. And you didn't mention a Martha at all as well, really. That they could also be a partner as well in going forward with these things, in kind of recognizing those buildings that are of a significance architecturally, socially, historically, and maybe a different framework needs to be set up for those buildings that are of importance. How one deals with them. The wrap that you proposed, I think, is a very clever idea, but on buildings of without significance, that will work well. But the ones that are really beautiful buildings, to put a steel frame on it and wrap a billboard around it, is, even if it's only for a year, I think could actually be quite controversial and quite that intervention, as we call it, could be reversible and could be taken off in a year. But in putting that structure on, it will do damage to the building. And one just needs to kind of treat these things sensitively. And I really think, as I said, the cooperation with the institute, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of architects out there like myself that will really offer our services and our help proactively. I know that there's a lot of negativeness out there, but I really feel that there are a lot of positive people as well that will be happy to just assist in trying to understand the importance of these buildings and how to manage, how to restore them. Now, over restoration can actually be a big problem as well. And without somebody with the proper knowledge on and experience, this can be easily done. And again, thank you. I don't mean to be critical. I really just mean to be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for that.
So Nolitha, Frank has worked extensively on Further Road and has presented on this platform. I think essentially the institute would like to partner with the city in just enriching your process. But yeah, we are very welcoming of the fact that the city is taking this direction. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, that would be very also beneficial to our processes, and we'd like that very much. We also do have ongoing engagements with AMAFA. We've engaged extensively with Dr. Lamuga from AMAFA. So currently, the process is when we have a problem building of heritage significance, we do present it to AMAFA. We have had engagements. We've even done inspections and walkabouts with AMAFA to these properties. So, with regarding to building wraps, that is just one of the strategies that we have in place to assist the problem building owners. But we have others as well through our repair and recover programs, through the incentives that are provided by the city, also including the debt write-off that can, play a huge part in assisting the property owners. So, to talk on the building wraps specifically, if it's a building of heritage significance, there is a presentation that needs to be done to AMAFA, noting the sensitivity of these buildings, and then considering each building on a case by case perspective. Those elements will be considered and a decision will be made. So because it's a problem building and them applying for building wrap does not mean that they will be automatically approved. We have to also do due diligence on our end as well as problem buildings, and we do engage AMAFA quite extensively on our processes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nolitha, and thank you for engaging with the profession. If you could kindly share those presentations with us, and then we will distribute a news flash with everyone. Just an announcement to the members: we are having an AGM on Thursday, the 3rd at 3 p.m., 160 Bula Road. If you could please make it for that AGM. It's a voting year, so we are changing the president, we are changing the reg from this year. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Nolitha. Just your last words, Nolitha, before we close.
Thank you, everybody, for participating in this engagement. We do look forward to engaging with SAIA, with our processes, and hopefully we can all assist each other in turning the city around. Thank you so much, everybody, for engaging.
Thank you. I wish you all a good weekend. See you on the next one. Cheers.
Okay. Bye.